let's get to it. Let's make our protein Parmesan crackers. So what we're going for is we're going for a cracker with a kind of a seedy topping. Okay, so we're going to mix together a bunch of seeds. We're going to get our topping ready first. That's the first thing we're going to do. So you can use any kind of seeds that you want to, and you want a total of about 4 tablespoons. So what I chose to do with mine is I'm using 2 tablespoons of sesame seeds. I'm using a tablespoon of poppy seeds, and then I'm using a tablespoon of caraway seeds. Caraway seeds are the seeds that give rye bread its really good flavor. So, you can use whatever you want. You can use fennel seeds, you can use cumin seeds, you can use mustard seeds. I chose these 3 just because they were different colors, and I thought these would look really pretty on top of the crackers. So we're just going to put those in a bowl together and kind of mix those up with our fingers, and then I'm going to put that aside. So we're going to wait for that. And now we are going to make our cracker dough. Now, this is really easy, and I know you guys know, I know everybody doesn't have a food processor at home, but the reason that I do this a lot for the videos is because it makes things go more quickly. You're going to see it's almost magic how quickly this dough goes together, but you can absolutely do this without a food processor. You can totally do this in a bowl, it's fine. But so what we're going to do, we're going to start with a half a cup of, I'm using something called white whole wheat flour, which is, sometimes it's called whole wheat pastry flour. It's whole wheat flour that's been ground really finely. It's very finely milled, so it's got a little bit of a softer texture. It's not as coarse. I found that if I tried to use just regular whole wheat flour, it just made the crackers too dry. And so this really worked out a lot better. I am mixing in a little bit of regular all-purpose flour as well, because I also found when I was experimenting that doing all whole grain flour, it was a little bit, again, too gritty. But it's fine because we've got a lot of other good ingredients. We've got plenty of fiber coming in from the seeds as well. So I'm putting in a half a cup of just regular all-purpose flour. And then this is the best part. I was able to put in a half a cup of PPP. That's 8 tablespoons. So that's adding right there, is adding 40 grams of protein to our recipe, which is kind of amazing. And I had not really experimented with this before, and I was just amazed at how beautifully it works. So I was really happy with that. All right, and now we're going to put in the flavoring. So 2 tablespoons of very finely grated Parmesan cheese. It's not a lot, but it is enough to really just bump up the flavor, and so that's important. And then we're going to put in a teaspoon of onion powder. I'm putting in a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm putting in a teaspoon of salt, and I'm putting in, this is optional, but I'm putting in a teaspoon of sugar. And the reason for that is because sugar, when it's exposed to heat, it helps things to get brown. So it's going to give the crackers a nice color. You can leave it out if you want to, but that's 4 grams of sugar spread across 40 crackers. So it's not a whole lot. So it's fun. And then the last thing I'm putting in is 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper. So all of that taken together is going to give our crackers a lot of flavor. Those of you in the U.S. who might sort of see where I'm going with this, we eat a lot of bagels here. Bagels are these big round breads that have a little hole in the middle. Probably most of you know what a bagel is. And there's a special bagel called an everything bagel, which is topped with a lot of seeds as well as usually some dried onion. So I'm kind of going for that flavor with the onion and the garlic and the seeds on top of our crackers. All right, so if you were doing this in a bowl, just mix up the dry ingredients with the bowl. I'm going to pulse this a few times just to get the dry things mixed. So we'll do that real quick. Okay, that's enough, just enough to, as I say, just to get it mixed up a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil. So you can use another oil if you want to. I used olive because it's really good with the Parmesan, and it really does give the crackers a good flavor. So that's going in next. And now I'm going to pulse this again just to kind of get the oil and the dry ingredients mixed. It's going to start to look like crumbs. right, so that's pretty well incorporated. It only took a minute. And again, if you were doing this at home, you would just mix this in with a fork. And now, this is where the magic happens. I'm going to gradually add a half a cup of water. And you're going to see as it's mixing, it's going to suddenly, at the very end, it's just going to magically turn into a ball of dough. No kneading required, none of that. Okay, so here we go. So it's very slowly with my half cup, starting to come together. I told you, I said it's really fast. It's kind of amazing, right? So there it is. We've got this incredible, it's like this perfect ball of dough. I'm going to pull this gently out of here, put that down, and you can see it's just got this great texture, okay? So I'm going to, this is not the way to do it. I'm going to put it down on the counter for a minute because I got to move this out of the way. All right, and now getting out that cutting board so that we can now roll this out. Now, one thing I want to caution you is that when you get ready to roll this out, we're going to let it rest for a minute, but what you're going to do once you take it out of the food processor, out of the bowl, you're going to put just the tiniest, I mean tiniest amount of flour on your cutting board. You don't want to put a lot because we're not trying to incorporate any more flour. It's just the perfect texture, and if you put too much on there, then your crackers are going to end up dry. But what we're going to do is we're just going to very gently kind of shape this into a square. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that's so that when we roll it out, hopefully it will kind of keep it square or it's a rectangular shape. It'll make it easier to cut it into cracker shapes. All right, good enough. And then what we'll do with this one is we're going to wrap this up in plastic wrap, and we're just going to let this rest for about 15 minutes. And the reason you do that is because that's going to give the flour time to just continue to absorb the liquid that we put in it, and it's just going to make it a little bit easier to roll out. So I'm going to put that one aside and pull out the one that I just made 15 minutes ago, and we're going to roll this out. So here's the thing with this dough. It's, as I said, you don't want to incorporate a lot more flour, and we've also got enough here to make about 40 crackers, and so you're going to want to divide this up either in half or maybe even into fourths. It's going to depend on how large your baking sheet is. Mine's pretty big, and so I'm going to be able to get half of the crackers onto my baking sheet. All right, so here we go. We've got our dough is ready. And I'm going to take my antique rolling pin. I told you guys before, I love using old implements, not because they're old, but because the quality is so much better than a lot of the stuff that you get that's new. So anyway, so this is an old rolling pin. And what we're going for, by the way, as we roll this out, we're going for paper thin. We want these to be really thin. As you roll, you're going to continue to put, as I said, just tiny amounts of flour on your cutting board, just enough to keep it from sticking. But again, we're not trying to incorporate a lot of extra flour because that's going to dry them out. But you can see how beautifully this is rolling. It's super easy. It's very, very smooth. And the other thing that I love about doing this is I can already get this nice flavor going. And odor. I'm smelling the onions and I'm smelling the garlic. And they haven't even gone in the oven yet, so I know they're just going to be really, really good. This is a really fun project if you've never made crackers before. It's a fun thing to do with kids because they love doing things with rolling pins. And this dough is pretty indestructible. I mean, there's really, you can't really hurt it. Okay, we're almost there. And as I said, we're going for, really, really paper thin on our dough. And be sure when you do this, if you're not experienced with rolling things out, is you want to always go from the middle, go out to the edges so that you have a nice even thickness all the way across. Okay, so this is totally not a rectangle, and that's fine. I don't really mind that my crackers are going to be not all perfectly square because I don't mind the rustic shapes. But anyway, so we're really good there. I don't know how well you can see this. I'm going to turn this up to the overhead camera so you can see. This is very, very thin. All right, so this is half, and so we should get about 20 crackers out of this, and I'm not going to make you watch me cut all of them. If you want to get fancy and you want to cut these out with cookie cutters, you can do that. What I would say is don't get too fancy with your shapes. Round is good, square is good, rectangle is good. If you want to do something fancy like a star shape, what's going to happen is those little tips of the star, when you bake them, are probably going to burn. So I would keep the shapes pretty simple. And I'm just going to cut these in very simple squares. And I'm doing them about 2 inches square. We're going to have some scraps on the edges, and for those of you who are experienced in baking, you know about when you take your scraps and you take the leftovers, you can re-roll them. You can do this with this dough, but just be careful because, as I said, you may end up with, too much extra flour in there, and that's something that we're trying to avoid because we don't want our crackers, to get too dry. So just cutting them, as I said, I don't really care that these edge ones have kind of a funny shape. It's totally fine with me. And now we're going to put these onto our baking sheet. And I'm just going to do a few so that you get the general idea. And so you're going to lay them out. I've lined my baking sheet with parchment. And I've got my oven, by the way. I always forget to tell you that. It's heated up to 425 degrees. It's really hot. And that's because we want these to cook quickly because that's going to help them to get kind of crispy. And they don't bake for very long. They bake for maybe 12 minutes. I timed them the last time I made them. Okay, that's enough, so you get the idea. All right, so that we've got that. Now remember that seed mixture that we made? So now we have to put that on top. So how do we make those stick? Well, very simply, what we do is we take a pastry brush, or in my case, a brand new paintbrush, because I like them better. They work really, really well. And we're just brushing the crackers with a little bit of water. It's all you need. I tried oil. I was just curious to see. They just slipped right off. Imagine that. So water works perfectly. So it's just enough to make the seeds kind of adhere to the crackers. And see, I mean, can't you see doing this with kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews? I mean, it's rolling and cutting and painting. It's so much fun. All right, so that is that. And then we just take the seed mixture and you just kind of drizzle that on top. The other thing I have in this other little bowl next to me is I have a little bit of extra salt. And, there is salt in the crackers and we don't really need it for flavor. But if you wanted to put just a little extra, this is very coarse sea salt. It does make a nice texture, but I would go really light on it if you wanted to do it. That's it. Now that was really, really fast. And as I said, now what happens is these go in the oven for about 12 minutes. And I'm going to go pull out the ones that I just baked. So hold on. I'll be right back. Let me take my microphone with me. And voila. Here we are with our beautiful crackers. And as you can see, some of them, even though there's no baking soda or baking powder, some puff up a little bit. They're very brown on both sides, top and bottom. They're very crisp and crunchy. You might notice when you bake them, it happened to me, is that the ones in the middle didn't get as brown as the ones on the outside, or the other way to put it is the ones on the outside browned quickly. And so it's fine if after about maybe 8 minutes, if you want to go in and kind of rearrange them, if you feel like they're just getting too browns on the edges. But get them nice and brown. Don't be afraid to leave them in long enough because you want them to be really crisp. And what happens is as they cool off, they get even crispier, which is really nice. So this is what we're going to do with our crackers. We're going to put them on this pretty Herbalife green tray. And, you know, what I like about this, I'm going to tell you about the nutrition properties, the information, as soon as we're done with the video. But, you know, suffice to say, we did have a half a cup of PPP in here. So we've got a lot of protein in our crackers. And, you know, crackers can, you know, they can satisfy that need for crunch and salt without you having to eat, you know, potato chips. And so to be able to get that crunchy, salty flavor that you're craving and get the protein, you're getting some nice omega-3 fats, by the way, from all of those seeds. And that's kind of nice too. And so you end up with, you know, really a pretty nice snack. So what I've got here is I've got some guacamole, I've got some regular hummus, and then I've got some roasted red pepper hummus, just for variety. A few weeks ago, I made an avocado hummus, so if you didn't see that video, you should check that out. I think I'm going to go for the red pepper. So this, you know, again, with hummus in particular, because it's made with beans, we've got some extra protein in there as well. Well, you can see how crunchy it is because it fell apart. This is absolutely delicious, and so much better than most of the crackers that you get in the grocery store, which are often made completely with white flour. Absolutely no added protein, I can assure you. You know, and not healthy fats. They're usually not going to put olive oil in it. So we've got a lot of nutrition, a lot of flavor, a lot of protein. This could make a really amazing healthy snack. So I hope I've inspired you to make these crackers. And when we come back after the video and I tell you about all the wonderful nutrition that's in here, you're going to be even more inspired. So don't go away, because I'll be right back.